This is AHA Business Radio, creating aha moments for business, by business, and about business, providing opportunities to discover information to help you run your business and guide your decision making. The more you know, the better decisions you make. AHA Business Radio is produced by Allan Hirsh Advisors. For more information, log on to ahabusinessradio.com. To join in tonight's conversation, call 410-481-1300. Now, here's your host for AHA Business Radio, Allan Hirsh.
Good evening. Welcome to tonight's show. My guest in the studio with me is Umar Hameed from Productivity Cubed. And we're going to be talking a lot about his new book, Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. Since I have a face for radio, I don't know what kind of sexy brain I have, but we'll figure that out during the conversation. Umar, welcome back to the show. I know you've been here before. Thank you for being here.
Alan blushed when he said that title, just so you know. Alan, thanks so much for having me back.
It's great. And I always ask the guests, and you know, what motivates you to get up in the morning and go to work, to do what you do?
Making a difference in the world. I mean, the juice for me is when I get a phone call from somebody saying, you know, hey, you changed my life. That's huge.
Yeah, I know the feeling because we do some of the same things, but do it differently with using different modalities. And it's really a great pleasure when you know you've changed somebody's life. Mm-hmm. Because when you change somebody's life, you're also changing everyone else in their life, their world. And it's just an amazing feeling when you hear from them what it's done for them. And I know you get that kick out of it just like I do. So tell me about the book a little bit. What motivated you to write the book?
I mean, if you take a look at the world we live in, there's so many problems going on. Take cancer, for instance. I mean, somewhere out there's so many people out there with brilliant ideas that somewhere out there is an idea for that, and the person just doesn't have enough maybe confidence or courage to take that idea and bring it in the light of day to share that idea. How many sonnets haven't been written? How many books haven't been written? How many mountains haven't been climbed? All because fear and hesitation gets in the way. And we have lots of books on, you know, how to do things and self-help and motivation. But Crazy Sexy Brain is all about how do we get those tools that create breakthrough. And that's what I wanted to bring to the world is teach them a simple way to break through our fears so we can do the awesome things that we want to and make this place a better world.
Well, it's one of the things, as you know, it's one of the things I talk about, and I use the acronym for fear, false expectations appearing real. Mm-hmm. Because that's really what it's about. That fear is expecting something that's not really going to, or not really going to happen, or may not happen.
But it feels real.
Right, it does feel real.
It feels real. It's powerful. It's for some people debilitating. And oftentimes, if we can go through the fear, there's nothing there. And sometimes we get hit by a car. So, hey.
Well, I hope that's not what we're going to talk about, getting hit by cars tonight on the show. So what's it about? You know, so it's about that. Tell us a little bit more. So, you know, the fear, getting stuck. Why do people stuck? Why did people stuck? And how do you get them unstuck?
So let's take a look at, you know, human beings. What drives human behavior? So at the heart of who we are as human beings is where we hold our beliefs about everything, about radio, about cars, about women, about coffee, about Donald Trump. I mean, there's lots of beliefs out there. And we get most of our beliefs, except for the Donald Trump beliefs, by the time we're 7 years of age.
Let's not be too political tonight.
Well, not at all. We're being funny. But so pretty much, you know, we get most of our beliefs by the time we're 7 years of age. And those beliefs, if anybody in authority says something believable, it goes in our unconscious and it guides our behavior from then on. So we get most of our beliefs when we're kids, and a belief that may have made sense when we were a kid certainly doesn't make sense when we're adults. So these beliefs dictate how we see the world. They create our mindset. And we all know people out there that, you know, their mindset is, you know, could be doom and gloom and nothing ever is going to go right. And other people are like, wow, it's great to be alive. And our mindset determines how well we do in life in whatever endeavor we take.
For me, that's what I've done over the last few years is why we do what we do. So much of us, we know how and what we do, but you're talking about, in my language, why we do it, which is something we learn or inherit, which is part of the limbic brain, which we can't communicate with. So, and that in trying to get unstuck from that, and what it's teaching us and guiding us to do is part of what you're doing in this book. Am I correct?
So, unstuck, yes. And also, I mean, think of all the beliefs we have. We have anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 beliefs that define who we are. And most of those beliefs are totally amazing, that allow you to have a family, a job, happiness, all those things. The beliefs that I'm interested in are the beliefs that get in the way when you want to do something like start a business or ask this most amazing, gorgeous person across the room out for a date.
On that, talking about the sexy brain, let's take a brief pause. I just remind everybody that I have Umar Hameed sitting here in the studio with me, and we're talking about his book, Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. If you have any questions from Hameed,
or for Umar, give him a call.
Give us a call, 410-481-1300. And I'd love to have some callers talk to him about this, because it's an amazing process, and I from people I know that you've worked with, it's amazing what you do with them.
So it's that natural human ability. So, for example, you could have someone that is, let's say, afraid of public speaking, and they can talk to groups of 2 or 3, but as soon as it gets more than that, they get this fear coming up, and they could go to a therapist for 6 months. And at the end, one Thursday afternoon at 2:00, the therapist says something. Just before they said that thing, they're still stuck. The therapist says something, and a moment later, this person gets unstuck. What deeply interests me is not that they got unstuck, but what happened in that moment of change. So we have that natural ability to change. The question is, how can we make that happen more predictably? And let's do it today instead of waiting 6 months.
And the only person that can change us is ourselves.
Or our spouses.
I'm
kidding.
No.
It's ourselves.
Well, they tried to change us.
Yes.
After 44 years with the same woman, yes, they do try to change us.
So, yeah, it's but the problem is that the enemy that we're fighting lives inside our minds and hearts, and it knows all our vulnerabilities. When we go close to do the thing we really, truly want to do, it says, you're not good enough, or you don't have the right education, or whatever inner dialogue comes up, and it sabotages us. So going back to the model I was trying to kind of reveal piece by piece, at the heart of who we are is where we hold our beliefs. That creates our mindset, and our mindset dictates our behaviors, the things that we will do and the things that we won't do. And our behaviors always give us our results. And so we can see our results, our parents can, our bosses can, and when we don't get the right results in the area that we want, what we do traditionally in America is say, okay, you need to change your behavior. And for many people, as hard as we try to change the behavior, it doesn't happen, or it happens for a little while and we go back to the way we were. And the reason that happens is that underneath every behavior that counts is a belief in our unconscious that controls it. And that's like a black hole of gravity that locks that behavior in place. So what we need to do is go down at the level of beliefs. And I use a branch of psychology called neurolinguistics that has the ability to let anyone get down to that level of beliefs very quickly. Once we uncover them, we can change them. And when we change them, your behaviors change automatically and effortlessly, and it changes lives.
So can anyone can you work or in helping people throughout this book? I guess the real question, sorry for the hemming and hawing, is because I unfortunately...
Do you need a breakthrough, Allan?
No, I don't need a breakthrough. I just, I know the book's not going to be out for another week or so, so I actually haven't seen to read it, so I'm not so sure what's in it. So I want to, the question really is, will this give the reader the opportunity to maybe unstick themselves?
To get unstuck, absolutely. So the first half of the book is all about how human beings work, where we're awesome, where we get stuck. In the second half of the book, we teach people tools like how to access peak states of performance. So we've all had a day in the last year, last 10 years, where we woke up, where we felt absolutely unstoppable and powerful. So I teach people in that book how to access that state anytime you want. So when you're going for a job interview, if you could access that state so you truly felt unstoppable, you're going to be so magnetic to the person interviewing you, they're going to want to hire you on the spot. If you're going for a raise, we also teach people some tools to get unstuck. Where are you stuck? Let's get you unstuck. So it's designed to be a how-to manual that teaches people how to get unstuck. And a lot of the content of the book is actually on an online course that they get included that has videos where I guide you through those processes. So not only do you read it, but you also get the visuals. So you get all the modalities. You get to hear it, see it, feel it, and you get breakthroughs. And when you do get your breakthrough, send us a note. Let me know, because that's the juice that drives me.
Just want to remind everybody, we're going to our first commercial break. We have the traffic update, and when I come back, I will continue this conversation with Umar Hameed from Productivity Cubed and the author of a new book, Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. And later in the show, I will have the AHA Business Trivia Contest. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating aha moments for business, by business, and about business. Once again, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Well, welcome back to the show. In the studio with me is Umar Hameed from Productivity Cubed and the author of a new book that'll be out in the next week or two called Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. And during the break, he suggested that if anybody wants to call in, ask any questions or have any comments, he'll be glad to send him a signed copy of the book. And he even suggested that I'll sign it as well. But he's the author, so we'll take
and the
take your
engineer
names.
volunteered to sign it too. This could be
if we
huge.
need to. But so if you want to call in, ask him any questions, please. We'll get you a free copy of the book signed by the author. So we were talking a little bit about the book before, but what you do is so different and probably strange to a lot of people. So give me an example or two of how you've helped people get through to their potential from those blocks where they might be stuck.
So let me give you an example. You take like any company, any organization out there, typically people fall into three categories. You have the A players. These people walk on water, do amazing things. Their productivity is through the roof. And if there were salespeople, they sell a bulk of what the company sells, right? Then you've got B players that do a good job, but never quite reach greatness. Then you got C players. We won't talk about them. But if you look at the skill sets of B players and A players, they're almost identical. The only difference is mindset. And for a company, if, let's say, a salesperson, they've got a B salesperson, usually it's just one thing that blocks them from becoming an A player. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a sales team, and one of their salespeople, they just cave in on price. They're taught to sell on value. They go to the customer, we're going to charge $80,000 for this. And the customer says, what are you kidding me? $80,000? That's too much. And automatically they'll cave in on price, which reduces the profit margin for the company. So they said, work with this person. And so as I work with that person, I said, okay, tell me about a particular time where somebody put pressure on you to reduce price, and you did. And they told me about that time. And we figured out from that event that when they were a kid, they were going out with the family to a restaurant, and they were about 13 years old, and they distinctly remember their dad turning to them, don't order the steak. We can't afford for you to have a steak. And it created a belief around money. And, money's hard to come by is the belief of the family, and that steak comment still haunts them today in their unconscious. So we figured out what the belief was, changed it, and it stopped their need to cave on price. So we could have given them all the coaching in the world to say, don't cave on price, stay firm. But there was an internal compulsion to do that. And what neurolinguistics does is goes down to that pivotal event, change it. So change happens in an instant. That's what I love about this work, is that in a few hours we can create profound change and convert B players into A players, which not only is huge for the person, because they get more money, fame, fortune, and they're a hero in the family, but for the corporation, they get a group of A players, and that makes it a much more effective organization. And that's a place where people want to work.
So how do you how can you help a CEO deal with this and create that team building?
So that's a great question, because ultimately for leaders of companies, CEOs, sometimes you hear them say, if it wasn't for the people, this would be a great gig, because that's the hardest part, right? It's like, how can you get people to?
It's the old story. You hire slowly and fire quickly, and we
seldom follow it. Yeah,
and we seldom follow it.
And so it's like, how do we get people to set aside their selfishness? So the question is, why are they selfish? And the reason is that oftentimes we want to make sure we're looked after. And when there's an idea, that we get the credit for it. When it's somebody else's idea, sometimes people won't lift a finger to help it. And sometimes people will kind of go out of their way to make sure it doesn't work out well because it wasn't theirs. So a CEO has to get people to set aside their ego and come together in a different way. And the only way to do that is to change the beliefs of the group. And in corporate speak, we call that the culture of the organization. And we need to impact the culture. And kind of your thoughts on that, Allan?
Well, for me, I think culture is very important in a business. The CEO, whether they know it or not, they set the standard for the culture by the way they behave. Mm-hmm. And in my belief structure, there are two parts of that. One is why they do what they do, which ultimately dictates how they behave. And most people don't know why they do what they do. Same way from a getting stuck point of view. But on the other hand, they don't know why they do behave the way they do. And when they do learn how they behave and why they behave, why they're compulsive about something, which is really a little different than what you're doing, but the same process, not same process, same thought, trying to get them to understand their culture. When they do, and they bring their team together, and everyone knows everybody else and why they do what they do, you can put the people in the right seats. They're happier, you're happier. And to me, the leadership aspect of it is very important. And leadership is something that I don't believe you're necessarily born with. I think leadership is something that can be learned. Mm-hmm. I think great leaders are great learners. And I'll finish that after I just remind everybody that I'm in the studio with Umar Hameed of Productivity Cubed, and the author of the new book, Unleash Your Crazy, Sexy Brain. And please give us a call at 410-481-1300 if you want to join the conversation and get a free book signed by the author.
So the title is Unleash Your Crazy, Sexy Brain, and the subheading is, get better results in sales, leadership, and life. Because ultimately, that's what we need to do is how do we get better results? How do we become happier? How do we become better leaders? How do we sell more? How do we become better spouses, better fathers, better mothers? And all of that revolves around the beliefs that we have and the behaviors that we do.
Absolutely. I agree with you. So, and what I was saying just before, I wanted to remind people they could call in, the leadership is learned, and great leaders have a tremendous understanding. They, as you said, they have to sometimes check their ego at the door, because in order to be a good delegator and trust other people to do their job, make decisions, and make mistakes, they have to be prepared to hold their ego. And that's probably something there where a lot of, I know I see it with a lot of small business and mid-sized business owner, they get stuck because they think they know it all and can do it all.
And sometimes they get stuck in, if you want it done right, I have to do it myself. And that's a belief. So ultimately, my definition of what a leader should do, there's probably three things. Number one is to have a strategically sound vision that's compelling, that people go, I'd take a bullet for that. That's worth coming to work here. And people that are working here, how do we inspire them to say, we're just not building a widget, that we're making a difference, not in the world necessarily, but in our world. So it needs to be a compelling vision. The second thing is, how do you develop a strong culture where people want to come to work, where you get all the pieces coming together in a way that the whole is much larger than the sum of the parts, where you get that chemistry that happens, that if there's a mistake that's happening, anybody in the entire team from janitor on up can go, wait a minute, the emperor has no clothes, and they do that knowing that everybody else has got their back, that if they're seeing it clearly, they'll support them, and if they're not seeing it clearly, there's not going to be a reprisals or attacks. It's going to be an explanation.
And a coaching opportunity, a teaching opportunity. We learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes.
Absolutely. So first one was vision. The second one is developing a culture. And the third thing is really ensuring that you have long-term shareholder value. I think that's the job of the leader. And the subset of that is, I think leadership is all about how can I help the people that I lead set aside their fear and hesitation just for a little while and see the possibility of what's out there. Because oftentimes just saying where we're going isn't enough. It's having that ability and that trust that people will say, I'll go on this journey with you. And when you get that and you've got that focus, this is where you build great organizations that make a difference.
I agree wholeheartedly. And talking about building a strong culture, great leaders do it by, one, as you talked about, trusting people, letting employees do the job, hiring people smarter than you who can do the job better, the particular jobs better than you, trusting them, letting them make mistakes, let them do their job. And
Let me pause you right there for a second, Allan, and don't lose your thought. As you're listening to this program and you're hearing Allan's words and that trusting you, letting them do that, if you're getting a physical response in your body, if you're a leader, that is a good clue that you've got a belief in there that's being violated. And that's one of the ways we uncover it, is when you hear something and there's a visceral reaction, that means there's something below. But please continue, Allan.
Thank you
That was
for
a teaching moment.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And that when you do, but it's trusting people. It's allowing other people to do the work. I've had a conversation, for example, with a colleague, one of my clients, who wanted to do all the accounting. Mm-hmm. And finally convinced him doing a cost analysis. He didn't want to train someone to do it. And I asked him the question, if you spent $1,000 today over the next 3 months and you got a return of $5,000 in 3 years, would you buy that investment?
And people would say yes.
Yes. Well, if it takes you at your rate $1,000 worth of your time to train somebody, that's going to save you in the next 3 years enough $5,000 worth of time. You've made an investment, and your time is more valuable than somebody else's. And you have an opportunity cost and an opportunity in those hours to produce and develop, sell more, and build a business.
Right.
And we need to go to commercial break. When we come back, I will continue this conversation with Umar Hameed of Productivity Cubed. I'm Allan Hirsh, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio 1300 AM.
Now back to AHA Business Radio, creating aha moments for business, by business, and about business. Once again, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Well, welcome back to the show. I'm in the studio with Umar Hameed, author of Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain, a new book coming out in the next week or two. And I really appreciate him being here. If you have any questions for him, please give us a call at 410-481-1300.
If you have a wayward employee or a troublesome spouse, call in.
Or you have a problem. We have to be careful with that. But anyway, please call in. And any caller calling in tonight to talk to us, we'll get a signed copy of the new book, Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. So I'm going to do something I usually don't do because I was in the middle of something when we had to go to break. But we were talking about some of the things that great leaders do. And one of the other things that I wanted to mention besides delegating is when someone does something well, you thank them. People need to be thanked 3 to 5 times more often than being chastised or told they've done something wrong. So it's always great to thank people. People appreciate that. They want to feel like they're doing something. They're welcome in the organization. And one of the other things that is, you mentioned it, Umar, when you talked about covering people's backs. One of the things I remember from being CEO, if an employee of mine made a mistake, my customer never knew it was anybody else who made the mistake other than me. I always took responsibility publicly for what my employee did. Mm-hmm. That because I was the owner, the CEO, and the face of the company. It's my responsibility, regardless of whether I had 25, 55 employees there. I'm the face. They don't get thrown under the bus. Now, that's when I make it learn to sit down with them and we'll talk about the situation as a learning opportunity for them. But as far as the outside world was concerned, they were protected.
So what do you think it is about buses? Because we're talking about throwing people under the bus, being hit by a bus. But anyway, so ultimately, if you can build organizations where people come together in a way, we get a lot more done. This is how you outpace the competition. This is how you outthink the competition. We talk about business strategy. We need to develop this strategic plan, and oftentimes people go away and they bring their team together and they think about where they want their company to go. But if the team isn't solid, if it doesn't have each other's backs, you cannot have the conversations you need to have because people are playing it safe and they're suggesting this is where we could go. That's within the confines of our comfort zone. But when you have a team that's strong, that's powerful, it allows you to really think, where can we make a difference in the world? Where can we be number one in the world? And you can only do that when you have a strong team. And that's where you get true strategy. And that's where you get that vision I was talking about that's worthy of conquering when you have a team that allows you to do that.
I agree 100% with you. And when people understand why themselves, and we look at it a little differently, for me, it's about discovering why they do what they do, why they behave the way they do. Yours is a belief structure, but it's the same thing. And it's interesting. I know you've read his book and seen the TED Talk on Simon Sinek on why, great leaders.
Yes.
People, if your employees aren't in love or believe in what you are doing, why will your customers believe or buy from you? So if you don't have happy employees and a good culture, why should your customers be happy with you? And secondly, people really believe and buy what you believe, not necessarily what you do. And that's a short statement for a long presentation, but to me that's very important for businesses. And it's about creating that culture so that the employees love what they do. You look at a company like Apple or Southwest. Mm-hmm. Both of those businesses believe in challenging the status quo, to think different about how they run their business. And everything is different about those companies. And they've changed the way people buy electronics and how they fly. And they've done that by having strong leaders who've created amazing cultures.
Absolutely. So the question is, everyone kind of uses the Apple thing and the Southwest, and most companies are like small companies. And it's like, somebody give me a break about Apple and Steve Jobs.
They were small companies. They started in they started in a garage.
But let's say you run a small restaurant. The question is, we've all had the experience. You go into a restaurant and the hostess comes up or the host comes up and says, I'm really happy you're at our restaurant, and how can we help you? And they say all the right things, and you sit down, and as soon as they leave, you go, that person did not mean any of that. You can just feel it. So you can feel when someone's being authentic. So the question is, how do we create a culture where everybody from the busboy to the hostess to the owner come in and they make...
you talk about a big company. Disney does it.
True, but I'm talking about small companies because that's what we're talking to here.
Absolutely.
Is how do you develop that culture in a small restaurant or a small company?
Fortunately, this one client of mine lets me tell the story. I have not told it on radio yet, but it's a small company in Baltimore that I work. I won't use the name of the company or what they do, but it's a small creative manufacturing company in the area. Been in business almost 35 years. Been working with them for 2 years. Never made a lot of money. You probably know, I think you might know who this person is, but I've worked with him. I helped him understand why he did what he did, which was building relationships based on trust. So working with him, understood his value proposition, changed the message of the company from what he did to, I believe in building relationships based on trust. I will work with you, provide you what you need, not necessarily what you want, ask you the questions so that we're perfectly clear so I can produce what it is you want. In the last 2 years working with him, he stopped selling things just to sell things. He value added, building trust. His business through the end of September is up 55% over last year for the whole year. In other words, through September, he met his goal, which was a 55% increase over all of last year. And his gross margin went from 40% to 68%. He's made awesome. more because he changed the culture of the business. And everybody within it and himself market that culture now. And it's changed the intent. This is a small business doing less than $1 million a year. And
so I'd add, not only market it, but now they know what it is, they live it.
Absolutely, he does.
Authentic. And it goes back to that, someone can say the right things, but if they don't feel it, you don't feel it. And so, yeah.
But for me, excuse me, he had to do all of this. All I could do was, as a coach, advise and help.
Right.
And meet with him once a month, basically, sometimes twice a month. He and his staff had to deal with the customers. They had to change the way they did things and what they did, how they behaved in order to make this happen. They did it. It's nothing I did other than help and coach.
Right, which is huge.
I understand that, but he deserves the credit. Anyway, so I interrupted you, so I'm sorry.
So when we create organizations like that, it makes life so much easier. There's a shorthand between the staff. Things get done faster. There's more fun in the place. The place becomes sticky, so people want to work there. More importantly, people knock on your door saying, how can I work here? Because this is a place I want to be. And for the owner, this is how it allows you to detach from the day-to-day operations. So you can think about the things you need to think about, which is, where do I want to grow this company? What's the vision? What's the culture? And it all comes together. It's all about human beings coming together in a way that you can create a whole that is much larger than the sum of the parts.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But and in this particular case, even in his 50s, he was prepared to learn and adapt. Got through some breakthroughs not through neuro-linguistic programming as you do, but helped him understand who he is so he could change what he was doing. He's better off. The employees are better off. The customers are better off. And his family and friends and everybody he deals with are better off.
So as we come into, this week we've got Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
And by the way, if anybody's listening that can explain to me why Canadian Thanksgiving is in October and ours is in November, I'll give you $20 because I really want to know. But
I know you're a Canadian citizen. You can probably tell why it was in Canada.
I have no idea why there's a difference in date. But so as we come to Thanksgiving, we're going to have family around the table, people that we love around the table. And as you look around that table, there are some people that have happier, more meaningful lives. And there's other people that are stuck. And let's talk about that when we come back.
Absolutely, because we do have to go to the next commercial. And when I come back, I will have the AHA Business Trivia Contest and continue my discussion with Umar Hameed, author of Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors, and this is AHA Business Radio on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.
It's time for tonight's AHA Trivia Question, where you can win great prizes from the AHA Business Radio Show. Call 410-481-1300 if you know the answer. And now, with tonight's AHA Trivia Question, here's your host, Allan Hirsh.
Well, tonight's trivia question is the Peter Principle, which was published in 1969, described a theory where managers rise to the level of their incompetence. Who wrote the Peter Principle? If you think you know the answer, please call 410-481-1300. And the caller with the correct answer will receive a gift certificate to the Fleet Street Kitchen, a Bagby Restaurant Group member. So please give us a call, 410-481-1300. Who wrote the Peter Principle? I'm in the studio, and I'm talking to Umar Hameed, Productivity Cubed, and author of Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. And we've been talking about some of the leadership issues that we both deal with in our own way. So the real question is, with this new book, as you said, it starts with the general mindset and how people behave and think. I think you said
That's right.
So the second half is helping them to change. Can they really change their mindset?
Absolutely. I mean, take a look at 9/11. How many people joined the armed forces in the next month or two after that? I mean, you're going to places where you're going to be shot and killed, but people say, no, I got to make a difference. How many people stopped living in their own world and said, hey, it's all about us coming together as a country? The level of humanity and generosity and neighborliness changed in that instant. That's a perfect example of mindset change. But we can change in other ways too. We don't need to have a catastrophe to do that. That just proves that change can happen in a moment. And there's many methodologies, and the book explains how to get that kind of change right here, right now in your life. And if we could do that, we make people happier, more productive, and we make this place a better place.
So please tell me another story and an example. You used a previous example, another example of how this kind of the neuralistic programming and what you're trying to get across in the book, which is really a self-help book on how to get unstuck. So just give us another example, because I think so often the stories you tell really
exemplify what it is.
Right.
So I went to this event. It was like about a month and a half ago. And as I go in, this woman grabs my arm, and I got to talk to you. About 8 years earlier, she brought her daughter in, who was 4.5 years old. And actually, she was 5. But when she was 4.5, she went to a party with her parents, and she was the only kid there. The world's most boring party. And luckily, this family had a dog, this cute little dog, and she got to play with the dog all evening long, had a ball. Then it was time to leave, and the mom said, all right, honey, time to go. Put on your gloves, boots, hats, right here in Baltimore. And as adults will do, they go to the front door, and they say goodbye for about 10 minutes. And the little one's like, oh, you guys are boring. I'm going to go play with the dog. And this time when she goes to the dog isn't expecting her, and the dog bites her in the face. So they have to rush her to hospital. The nurses clean her up. The plastic surgeon makes the scar disappear. But now she's 5. Each time she looks in the mirror, she sees a scar that doesn't exist, and her face falls, and she feels awful. And the mom came in and said, I don't want my kids starting school with that kind of self-image. And we did an NLP session, and literally within an hour.
NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Just want to make sure everyone understands that. I have a tough time pronouncing it, so.
I noticed. We'll help you with a breakthrough later.
Okay.
And so we did a session for about an hour and a half, and the mom called back a couple of days later saying, I'm not sure what you did, but each time she looks in the mirror now, instead of feeling sad, she has this big, silly grin on her face. So this was 8 years after the event, and I had not seen the family, and she stopped me and said, I just want you to know that she still talks about that time she came to visit you because you changed her life that day. And the reason I like sharing that story is this, that a 5-year-old has no idea what a belief is, but change is possible for us, whether you're a 5-year-old or a 95-year-old. It's our job to reach our potential, and if you can get through the blocks that stop us, that allows us to make a difference in the world and be happier and more resourceful.
So how did you feel when that woman told you?
So I'll tell you about the two parts. The first part was when she called and said, this is the issue. And that night, it was like, I have no idea how I'm going to make this happen. And I was so excited, but I knew with confidence that I'd help this kid change. But after I got the phone call a couple of days later that had made a difference in her life, that's still one of the times I go to. When I'm not feeling 100% at the top of my game, I think back to that phone call, and it always brings me back to passion level goes up to a 10, clarity goes up to a 10, and my reason for being goes up to a 10. So those past events that have happened to us, we can actually access those to access peak states of performance. Unfortunately, most of us go back to those negative events where we were rejected or we failed, and we bring that back into our lives. And that's why we kind of don't get the results we want. So I show people in that book, Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain, how to let go of those negative events, learn from them, let them go, and bring those positive events that give us the resources we need to build a life that we want.
So without giving away too many secrets for those who don't buy the book or call in and get a free one, what are some of the hints or things that you think they can do as an individual to unblock themselves.
So I'm going to give you instructions how to do one of these things. And while we're sitting here in the studio, we've got an engineer. And what's your name, young man? Nathan. He looks amazing, by the way. And we got Allan. So I'm going to guide you guys through this process. So I just want you
Just before you do that, knowing what scheduled time we're on, just want to remind everybody the trivia question is, who wrote the Peter Principle? It's a book about managers rising to the level of their incompetence. Please call 410-481-1300 if you know the answer to that trivia question.
Was it Principal Skinner from The Simpsons?
No.
Darn it. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this would be more for people that are a little bit older. As you're driving.
Well, that eliminates Nathan.
It does. But Nathan, you can vicariously live through Allan. So I want you to think about, just for a moment, the first time you held your most favorite child in your arms when they were born. Just go back to that moment and see what you saw back then and what it felt like holding that bundle of joy. When I do that with an audience of 150 people or 500 people, literally you can see people in the audience, a smile comes on their face, all the tightness in their face.
Now I'm laughing. Because
I noticed that. Something happened. Did they pee on you or something?
No, she took her first defecation.
Number 2.
And
She's a good judge of character. What can I say?
Right? Well, you know my dog. All over me, my shoes, I had a gown on. It was the first time I had a chance to hold her. And I mean, I just laugh at it today. So
it changed your state immediately, right? Just thinking about that event allowed you to access that feeling you had
absolutely.
Back then. And that's what we have the resources to access things that we've done in the past and use them where we need them now. Looks like we have a caller.
Okay. But as soon as he gives me the sign, Nathan? Okay. Adam from Baltimore, thank you for calling. You there?
Yeah, hey, I'm here.
So who wrote the Peter Principle?
Is it Raymond Hall, I believe?
No. Unfortunately, you have the wrong person. I thank you for calling. Give us a call at another time. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so
all right, Adam, that was a good try.
Right, we've only got a couple minutes left. So, you want any other hints that show up in the book?
Not so much. So, one of the things we talk about in the book is how do you bring your team together? Because oftentimes, when somebody comes into a meeting, let's say they're discussing this one issue, and they go away, come back 2 weeks later, and before they come in, if you talk to the individual members of that team, a lot of times they have a totally different understanding of what happened and what they agreed to. So there's a process in the book that I share with people. It's called TAP, the Team Alignment Process. And what this quite literally does is the entire meeting can be handled on one page. So they get to figure out where they are right now, what they want to accomplish, what are the limitations that get in the way, what are the resources. So when they leave that meeting, quite literally everybody gets a sheet of paper that outlines the journey they're about to take. So everyone's on the same page going in the same direction. And I can't tell you how many leaders have said, this has made our meetings so much more effective because everyone knows what we're doing, why we're doing it, and they've got an action plan to do it. And so when we lead companies or lead ourselves, it doesn't have to be complicated. What I want to do is to bring easy-to-use tools that are easy to execute, but incredibly powerful in changing and transforming lives.
Well, I know you do a wonderful job from people I know that you've worked with, whom we both know that have worked with you. You've done an amazing job for a lot of people. I want to congratulate you on that.
Thank you, Allan.
I want to congratulate you on the new book, which is Unleash Your Crazy Sexy Brain. But before I end, I just want to remind everybody that we did not have a correct answer to the author of the Peter Principle, and I hate to say it, his name was Lawrence Peter. So he developed the Peter Principle, which is named after himself. I'm sorry no one called in.
Are you going to do a Hirsh Principle, Allan?
No,
Why
I'm not. Listen, I spent so many years in publishing, as most of my life. Technically, I still do it a little bit, not as a publisher, but as a rights holder. I've had enough of it. Publishing. I stick to the radio and coaching. But Umar, how can people, again, thank you for being here. How can people reach you?
So the best way to reach me is you can give me a call, 410-949-7067. or go to my website at nolimitswithanselling.com.
Well, again, thank you very much for being here. I want to thank my producer, Nathan, for everything he does to make the show happen. I want to thank my videographer, Larry Wilner, who actually videotapes the show on LW Biz Flicks. Please join me next Tuesday at 6 p.m. when my guest will be Linda Katz-Wilner. We will be talking about public speaking. She's a company called Successfully Speaking. I'm Allan Hirsh of Allan Hirsh Advisors, your host. To reach me, you can call me at 443-977-4500 or visit my website, allanhirshadvisors.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at AHA Biz Radio. That's AHA Biz Radio. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there. This has been AHA Business Radio
Gobble, gobble.
on CBS Sports Radio, 1300 AM.